Hey everyone, welcome to another episode of Clockedin with me, your host, Jordan Edwards. I'm thrilled to have you tune in as we dive into the dynamic world of productivity, success, and stories of incredible individuals who've mastered the art of getting things done. Whether you're commuting, hitting the gym, or just relaxing at home, this podcast is the go-to source for inspiration and actionable tips to level up your productivity game. I'm on a mission to unravel the secrets of those who seem to effortlessly manage their time and achieve their goals. So if you're ready to clock in and unlock your full potential, you're in the right place. We've got a lineup of amazing guests, industry experts, and thought leaders who will share their insights and strategies to help us crush your to-do list and make the most out of every moment. Get ready to get inspired, motivated, and equipped with the tools you need to supercharge your productivity. This is Clocked In with Jordan Edwards. Let's dive in. Hey, what's going on, guys? We got a special guest here today, Sang Kim. You might have seen him before. It's Health is Wealth. We're back for another episode. Is this episode nine? Episode nine. So the past 8 episodes we've been talking, it's called Health is Wealth. And the past episodes we've been talking about health. And now in this episode, we're going to dive into wealth because Sang was at, how long were you financial advisor for? Tell us a little bit about your financial background.
Yeah. Well, I taught high school for 5 years, and then I got into financial planning. So was really into financial planning on that side for about 7 years with a company called Asante Wealth Management in Canada, and then I joined TD Wealth for another 15 years or so. uh, a year of selling insurance before that. So it's like over 23 plus years in financial services.
A-
You know,
Absolutely. And
yeah.
this is why I wanted to talk to Sang about this because we were actually having a conversation right before we got on. And what was the conversation? What were you getting into? We were talking about longevity, and
Yeah.
you have an idea that you might think you're optimistic about it, but it could happen. So explain it a little bit.
Yeah. And this is my bias and this is my filter, but I do believe, and there are people out there that also believe this too. And it sounds really weird and it sounds like it's way out there, but I truly believe that, and let's call it within 50 years, that we will figure out with AI and with lots of different models out there, we will be able to live well beyond 120 years of age. So,
Wow.
uh, and 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 it sounds a little crazy, right? But if you think about it, there are animals on this earth that live well beyond 120 years of age, like they have discovered tortoises that are 300, 350 years of age. And they're made of the same stuff as us. So, what you see in the universe and all the elements out there, we are made out of the same atoms, right? So, it's a matter of time of when we figure that out versus if we figure it out. So, I do believe it's going to happen.
Absolutely. I mean, because there's only enhancements going on in regard to everything. And I just want to bring up an interesting point. Like, I'm looking up this chart right now. It's from Statista. And essentially what it says is that in 1860, the average age, life expectancy was 39.
Yeah.
1865, it went down to 35. And this is just in the United States from 1860 to 2020. And pretty much around 1900, it was 50 years old, 48 years old. So
Mhm.
that now today, we're at around 78, 79 years old. So my point be, and this is 2020, so it's not even updated. So my point being here is that it went up 50% in a short period of time. Like even from 1970 to 2020, which is
Mhm.
50 years, it went
Mhm.
up almost 10%. And we're just exponentially getting better with technology and understanding our bodies and seeing our bodies in different capacities. And it's really causing us to constantly be on this cutting edge of change. So it's like maybe it is possible. I mean, I've had Chris Crone, he came on the podcast and he said he's looking to live to 140. So everyone's got these own ideas, but the main thing we want to discuss here is like we have this idea of living a long time. How are people going to be able to afford living a long time? How does finance play into this
Yeah.
life experience that we're looking into? Because for me, I feel like it's always been once you get your finances right, then the world kind of opens up to you. And there becomes this opportunity and these windfalls, and you can actually think correctly. Because a lot of the time, when the finances aren't right, you get into this desperate state of you can't get your food, shelter, and clothing. And that can be one of the scariest things out there. So
Yeah.
it's how do you remove that? And how do you set yourself up for a long time of wealth and prosperity?
Yeah. I think when you think about some of the simple principles to follow, right? And the one principle is to pay yourself first,
Okay.
right?
Elaborate on that. Yeah,
Yeah.
elaborate on
So,
that.
so that principle of paying yourself first is, so let's say you make $1, right? So how much of that dollar after tax are you going to put away for the future? So it produces an income so that you don't have to work,
Yes.
right? So so let's say you're making $100,000 a year in today's dollars. Not that that's the final answer, but we just keep it simple, right? So how much money do I need to set aside to replace my current income in today's dollars, right? But of
Yeah.
course, if you're doing the calculation, you want to do the calculation with inflation or future dollars, because
Yes.
that 100,000 isn't 100,000 in the future. It's much more than that. It could be
Yeah.
$140,000 is what you need. But let's just use the 100,000 in today's
Wow.
dollars, for example, right? So, so and I think you can get a calculator online to do that, or even better, I think for most people, I would say most people, like 95% of the population, should be working with a financial advisor. And the reason for that is it's not that you're not smart enough. It's not that you can't do it. Um, but the thing is to have somebody there so that you don't make any big mistakes and do something that you shouldn't be doing at the wrong time. Like during the financial crisis, that period, the market bottomed, I believe it was around March the 3rd, 2009, right? And the worst thing to have done there was to sell off your stocks or equities at that time, right? So people that weren't working with an advisor could have made a terrible mistake and got out of the market when the markets were down. But a veteran advisor would have kept that person, the emotions out of it, and just kept them in the game, right? So that is so important because it's so hard to time the market. You got to stay in the game,
Yeah.
right?
100%. They've actually talked about that with Warren Buffett, and they talked about if you remove the biggest days ups or downs in the market
Yes.
over the total duration of being in the market,
Yeah.
the return goes down drastically. And it's kind of like this whole idea of if you're just in the game, then you like statistically it goes up. So like
Oh,
when things go down,
yes.
and the whole thing with the advisors, what they do is basically remove the emotional attachment. So like, but like once you recalculate your mind, like where it's going down, good buying opportunity. Like these are the flips that we have to make because it's very
Yes.
contrarian to be like, wait, I'm holding something and it's going down. I don't want it to go down anymore. I should sell it. So these
Yeah.
just different ideas. And back to the other point you brought up about the 100,000. So there's this idea called the 4% rule. And I just know about this stuff because I've read a lot of personal finance books.
Yeah.
And the 4% rule is basically the withdrawal rate without any issues. So
Yeah.
basically, it means that you're thinking continue growing. And the funny thing is that in retirement, a lot of people they'll do the 4% rule, but then they always forget to take out the principal because they keep letting. And then what ends up happening is you get to this long period of time where like the money is way more valuable at an earlier age in your life when you can do more activities and do more things than later in life. Um, so it's this very interesting idea, and I've came up with a lot of these ideas from the book Die with Zero, and there's another book called Your Money or Your Life, and it becomes very interesting when you start realizing that like if you want 100 grand, the 4% rule would be you do 100 grand divided by 0.04, and it's 2.5 million. So that means if you have 2.5 million, you can create $100,000 risk-free, basically, without doing anything. And
Yeah, I'd be careful with the word risk-free,
of
right?
course,
Yeah. Yeah, because whenever you use that word risk-free, it means different things to different people, right?
yeah, and I think
Yeah,
a
you got to
lot
be careful how you use it, and like I know what you mean.
yeah, I was
However,
going to say a lot of words in this podcast will probably require definitions. And like, I'm not a financial advisor and it's not financial advice. And
yeah,
yeah, for sure.
yeah, yeah. So what I mean by that is, and what Jordan is alluding to is this principle of 4%. So if you've got this block of capital, what did you say? 2.4 million roughly, right?
I think it's 2.5 million. Yeah, I just did it.
2.5 million, and yeah, that's right. Sorry, 2.5 million, and you take out $100,000 a year
Yes.
from that. Let's say it's one account. Okay.
Yeah.
So that's $100,000 a year income before tax. So the capital will stay intact. Um, in a, let's just say, let's just call it a balanced portfolio, right?
Yes.
So you've got 60% stocks and 40% fixed income in cash, like investments, right? We'll
Yes.
call that a balanced portfolio. Okay. A moderate risk type portfolio. Um, the the chances of you running out of money at a 4% withdrawal rate is very, very low. The probability is very low. And that's what
Yeah.
we're talking about here is we can't say, you can't use the word guarantee at all, because who knows, black event do
Black
happen,
swan events. Yeah, of
right?
course.
Black swan events do happen, right? But the odds are in your favor drastically on a
Yes.
4% withdrawal rule,
100%. And
right?
yeah, and I mean, the whole idea here is that like, we're just going to have this conversation and it's just tips that we've learned that might be able to help for you. It's not invest in this specific thing, but it's more like these different tips and tricks that might work for you in a different regard. Like one of the tips I use for myself is I have different apps that I will invest in like through the brokerage account. And like once it goes in the brokerage account, it's not going like, oh, I spent too much money this weekend. I need to take it out of the brokerage account. Like these are like little things where like once the money goes in, which comes back to the pay yourself first thing, because when you really think about pay yourself first, it's you pay your car every single month, you pay your phone every month, you pay your Wi-Fi every month. Why should you not pay yourself? And this whole idea of paying yourself, and you see it in America, especially and around the world, where people really optimize, a majority of the middle class and some of the upper class, like a majority of their wealth is literally in their 401k, which is automatic, pay yourself first concept, and their mortgage and their home because it's another force pay yourself first. So when you think about these things, these are both forced savings accounts. So if you can just institute these things on your own, where it's, hey, I can save $25 every single week. Okay, great. And then just make it automatic. And once you automatic and systemize it, then you don't even have to think. It just happens. And you look up one day and you're like, whoa, I feel like I robbed a bank. Like I don't know how all this money came here. Because it's not usually, I mean, some people get a big windfall, but a majority of the time you're building brick by brick by brick.
Yeah, yeah. You can use the laws of compounding, right? And that rule of 72. So if you take 72 divided by your compounded growth rate, so let's say 72 and divided by 10%. So let's say the S&P 500 does 10% over the next 30 years compounded, right? So that means 72 divided by 10 is 7.2 years. So that means that your portfolio will double every 7.2 years with that rule of 72, right? So it's the consistency over time and being in the market. And then if you're younger, starting early, like if it's
Yeah.
$100 a month, compounds dramatically.
Yeah.
And
Yeah,
you can
because
do some calculations where, you got a young person, let's say they started investing when they're 18 years old and it was $100 a month for 10 years. And then they stopped investing, right? Versus someone that started 10 years later, right? That that 28-year-old versus the 18-year-old that stopped, well, that 18-year-old will have more money than the 28-year-old that started 10 years later and keeps contributing about $100 a month, just say, right? And then they keep contributing, let's say, for 30 years. So that 10 years of doing the forced investing compounds and becomes a greater sum than that 28-year-old, roughly 10 years
uh,
later that started, right? So
yeah, 100%. So here are the actual numbers. So if you do zero, if you start off with zero, zero, right, and you invest $100 a month, here, let me start it off. You do zero and you do $100 a month, and we're gonna do that for 10 years.
yeah, yeah,
And then we're
at 10% rate of return, and
and
the
then
18-year-old stops after 10 years.
and then when do you want him to go till?
Okay, and let's say that 18-year-old retires at 65.
So he doesn't touch it till he's 65. So that would
Yeah,
be
yeah. So
40
18,
years, 37 years.
yeah,
37 years. So the
no,
great
40, 47 years.
no, no, no. It would be 28 plus 30 would be 58 plus 7. Yeah, 37. Because you already did the first 10 years. So basically what I did, guys,
Okay. So he's 18. He contributes for 10 years
yeah, so after
until
the
10,
10 years,
up
if he
until
doesn't
28, and then he stops putting money into it, right? And then he retires at 65 at a 10% rate of return, right? So that's 47 years, right, of compounding
of
without
total,
making any more contributions, right?
what's the so it would be 37, so it would be 18 to 28 is 10 years.
Yeah.
And then it would be 37 years by the time he gets to 65. So basically what it was you do basically what you do, there's this website called investor.gov, and basically it's a compound interest calculator. So essentially what I did was I typed in 100 and then I did $100 monthly contribution, 10 years, ended up being $19,000. That $19,124 with no more contributions after 37 years of a 10% return. What do you think it equates to?
Yeah, I'm just guessing right now. It should be well over $1 million.
This one has it at
Okay,
$650,000.
okay,
But if you do add an extra like 6 years, by 43 years, you're at 1.1 million. Because
yeah,
that's where the real compounding starts happening that people don't realize, because it's not that it's the compound, like, yes, the earlier is the better, but it's more along the lines that it's once there's velocity in the money, then the money can really start moving. So the more money you have invested, the more it's going to compound and grow. So these are all just interesting things that you can start to become aware of where it's like, oh, what do they mean by that? How does that work? What is that? And these are things that you can kind of like get into. So it becomes very interesting.
Yeah, and then plug in while you're doing that the 28-year-old that does $100 per month.
Yeah, so if you do $100 a month for the 37 years,
Yeah,
because
yeah,
it's only
yeah.
28 to 65, you're
Yeah,
right around 400 grand. So it's $250,000 difference. Massive. Massive. And they didn't even have to invest all of that because the 19,000, you already left it at 19,000 and let it run.
yeah,
So the whole idea here is that the earlier you can get involved in this and the more, because it's really just two things. There's only two variables. It's the amount of money. Well, I guess there's three variables. It's the amount of money, the time, and the compounding. Those are the three variables. Once you get through those three, though, then it will really open up your eyes because that's where the real growth can be.
yeah. And if you think about it, right, and you say, okay, if I can make sacrifices earlier on in my life, it's going to make a huge difference later on, right? So I think if you're looking at spending money or not, right, and you say, okay, I've only got so much money. If you can sock away 20% of your cash flow after you pay tax into savings versus 10%, that's going to
Yeah.
be huge earlier on. So the message is the more you sacrifice early on in life while you're making money, the greater your nest egg is if you don't touch it. And let's just say you just bought the S&P 500. Like you can
Yeah.
buy an ETF, the SPY,
So that
right?
was another that's another big disparity that I wanted
Right?
to hop in on is because you said the word save. So a lot of people think savings and they leave money in their bank account and they're like, I'm just going to save it. If you just took that savings and invested it, then that changes that's where you start getting the 10% instead of like the 0.03%. And that's where the compounding happens. It's not because you saved more money in your bank account. It's the investing that allows it to compound.
Correct. And and you've got to save money for different goals, right? So let's say your goal is to have an emergency fund
Yes.
just in case let's say you need to have 3 to 6 months of cash, available liquid money that's invested in a safe instrument like in the US, treasury bills, money market funds, right? Like in Canada, we have guaranteed investment certificates, something that's safe and it's insured,
Yeah.
and have access to, and it's liquid, right? You're gonna make it really more conservative. Now, the growth money that we're talking about is that money you don't need, like you alluded to, and you're gonna save it away and not touch it till retirement.
Yeah.
So you got different pockets. You got the short-term money pocket for
Yeah.
emergency, and then you've got and then you got a goal. So you're a younger person and you're going, okay, I need to save money to put a down payment on a condo or a house. So you might have a different bank account for that goal or different investment account. And then you get the long-term account, which is I'm not touching it till retirement. So you got three different accounts, right?
Yes. Yes. And I absolutely, this is one of my favorite things is paying towards the different accounts. Because one of the things I mean, if you're listening to this podcast, you know that I enjoy traveling. So, like, one of the biggest constructs of traveling is that you're sitting there going, wait, I thought you were going to compound interest this money. Where did all the money go? Like, and you're trying to use it for your travel and you don't want to overuse your travel money. So, what I do is I set a certain amount per month and I transfer it to an account. Why? Because if I use it, then it will go down, and that's my monthly spend on my stuff. That's fine. Or if I don't use it, then it just starts to compound in that account. But I know I'm saving everything in that account for travel purposes. So when the big trip comes up, and I actually did this for I did this, there's an app called Acorn, and I can put the referral link in the code. But basically what it does is like you pay, I want to say like $1 a month or whatever it is, and then it will compound. It will basically take your money, like I have it take like $30 a week. So it takes money each week and it just invested into the S&P 500. And it just, but I use this as my non-seeing travel money, right? So I do this for years and years. And then in 2021, I went to Peru, right? And the trip ended up, we did the Inca Trail, we did this whole thing, and I was on this whole budgeting thing, and I didn't want to overspend on the trip. So what I did was I took the money that I've already pre-saved and put it towards this trip. So basically, by the end of the trip, I was like, the trip's free because I already had it saved. So my point being here is that finances sometimes sound scary and sound intimidating and do this thing and do that thing, but it can become very empowering if you find the buckets that you want to invest in and you do them properly and you do them every single month, because then it starts to compound. And that's when you start going, whoa, why do I have so much money in my travel account? And it's not you, it's just that the money's always, it's just
Yeah.
compounds.
Yeah. And
I'm saying,
one of the principles of investing
I was
is
going to say with your
time horizon,
experience, yeah, I was
right?
going to say with your experience, you've seen
Yeah.
this. I've seen
Yeah.
this with a few people. You've seen this drastically more, so you can definitely speak much.
Yeah. What I would say is you got to look at your time horizon, and risk tolerance will determine how risky the portfolio is or the investment is for that goal. So
Okay.
I'll give you a scenario, right? If your if your travel account is going to be used up in within, I would say, 2 years, right?
Okay.
Or in less than 2 years, I would not invest it in the S&P 500 because the S&P 500 could
Goes up
technically
and
go
down.
down 30 to 50% in that time span, right?
Yes.
So you got to match your timeline with your goals, and
Yes.
then you got to make sure the investment strategy matches up with the timeline. So for a travel account that you're using within 12 months, I wouldn't make it so risky. I would have it invested in safer investments like treasury bills, GICs, some guarantees, because then you know you're going to have it all plus the interest, right?
Yes.
Now, if your time horizon is, let's say, greater than 5 years, right? You might want to, and if you want some access to growth, you may want to get a conservative to a balanced portfolio, depending on
Yeah.
your risk tolerance, right?
Yeah.
But, and then, greater than 5 years, 6 years, that's where there's time for the markets to rebound.
Yeah.
Because if you look at it, um, roughly 75% of the time, the markets are going up, and 25% of the time the markets are going down,
Interesting.
roughly, right? Just so the we're in a bear market about 25% of the time, right?
Okay.
But most of the time the markets are in a bull market or a rising market,
Yeah.
right? So yeah, you got to take those things in consideration.
Yeah.
Okay, when we're talking about, because if you're putting all your money into the S&P 500, is considered higher risk because
Yeah.
it's all equities or the stock market.
Yeah.
So there's more up and down, and
Absolutely.
you've got to be comfortable with a minus 50% because that can happen in a
Yeah.
short period of time,
Yeah.
right?
And
So I just want to caution you on that.
no, I
Does
appreciate
that
that
make
because
sense?
yeah, no, it's very interesting because that's true. Because with that account, I'd never even thought about it because I'm just like, I just put it in, and then when it's
Right.
time for the trip, I'll just take some out. And if it's less, it's fine. If it's higher, it's whatever.
Right. Right.
But like the other account I have that I do more with, like I put more in, that one we just leave in like a money, like you get
Okay.
4% or 5% thing, because it's
Okay.
like I don't want that, but I don't want that to go awry where I'm like, where is it? Like,
Yeah.
yeah,
Yeah. No, no, it's good. Right. And it's have a certain bank account or an investment account for a goal, and it keeps you sane. You know what I mean?
yeah,
Right?
I
Like in the
completely
if the markets tank, and that's supposed to be your safe money account, and you go, oh geez, we were supposed to go to Europe with that money, and now it's worth 30% less or 50% less. Oh honey, we can't go to Europe this year because it's a bad time to pull the money out,
and it
right?
doesn't make sense. Yeah, and you see
Yeah,
that happen all the time.
yeah, yeah. So
It's,
I want you to, yeah, just be aware what the goal
yeah,
is, what your timeline is, and then you can, and what your risk tolerance is. Now, you might have a high risk tolerance. You go, that's okay. I'm going to just invest in the S&P 500. I don't care if it goes up and down, but I've got this other pot of money that I could take out and not touch the S&P 500 money, right? And
yeah,
then I'm okay.
100%. Yeah, because I mean, the other thing is that we have so many strategies and it becomes so complex. So like we've got the pay yourself first. We've got the compounding, understanding the end goal in sight. So like whatever the income you want to produce, the 4% rule. What other tips or strategies do you think are really important for people to just like my whole goal of this is to raise financial literacy. So I
Mhm.
think financial literacy
Yeah,
is something that we're definitely struggling with. And when
yeah,
people go, a credit card, I don't even know what that is. We might talk about that stuff in another episode, but this is just more of, hey, if you're making money, keep more money than you have. Like spend less than your savings. Like that's a really good one. Like I like that one a lot where it talks about even the ones that talk about like the housing and people who are house poor and like
yeah,
it's a travesty or like you have this cool car but it's more than your housing payment and now you can't even go on a trip because
yeah.
your house and your car are so expensive.
Yeah, yeah. Like the other principle, I think, I mean, and we've already talked about it, right? It's delayed gratification,
Yes.
right? So I know there's been a number of studies out there with delayed gratification. So if you look at like the book, The Millionaire Next Door, which is one of my favorite books, Stanley and Danko, I believe, are the authors, right? And it really is about delayed gratification, right? And if you can do it in your younger years, delay buying a brand new car until you have the cash flow and the investments to pay for it, right?
Yes.
So I don't think I don't think I've ever bought a brand new car, right? It's always been like the newest car would have been a demo or I've taken over a lease, but it's been, it maybe a few thousand kilometers on it, right?
Yeah.
Because I didn't want to, pay the extras up
Because
front,
there's so much
right?
depreciation on it,
Yeah,
of course.
exactly, right?
So like
And
when you start to realize it, it doesn't make sense. And I actually recall reading The Millionaire Next Door in like I want to say 10th or 11th grade. And I was just like, this is fascinating because
yeah,
it does put in perspective of like most people who reach millionaire status don't even make more than 100 grand. Like, because
yeah,
it's not an income game, it's a habits game. So once your habits get correct, then it
yeah,
becomes super easy. And the way you do that is there's so many ways to automate it now. It becomes
yeah.
so simple and easy.
Yeah, and as I can recall, some of the principles in that book, right? Number one is delayed gratification, right? It's yeah, you don't need everything to be brand new, right? Or delay things for a year or 6 months until you purchase it. Because if you have the habit of delaying gratification, you think about it, right? It's like, okay, do I really need to replace my iPhone now? It still works, right? I've had it for 3 years. Is there, am I getting any more value out of buying the new iPhone 16? No, right? So it's like, okay, I can delay that. Just from delaying it 1 year, you're saving yourself $1,000, just say. Take that $1,000 and invest it for the future,
Yeah, into the Apple stock.
right? Or yeah, right? You
Literally
know,
buying the companies you want to do is a big one, but it's also this idea of being committed to yourself, because the biggest thing I find with a lot of people through the coaching is that there's some individuals who have expanded themselves so much in regard to this, they want an instant gratification, that they don't build up this protection and this financial savings, whether
yeah,
it's saved or invested, it doesn't really matter, but it's just this ability to think clearly. Because I
yeah,
think that's one of the biggest ones where you find someone who's very paycheck to paycheck, and in America, that's very, very common right now.
yeah,
And it doesn't allow you to think clearly.
yeah. And here's another one that I did when I first bought my first house was we rented out the basement. So I didn't have any kids at the time. And so my ex-wife and I, we bought this little house and we said, hey, there's like 2 extra bedrooms downstairs. So we rented the basement out to a university student, right? So now you've got an additional form of income,
Yes.
right? And and this strategy can be used like today, right?
A
You can
hundred.
still do it. So maybe you can't afford to buy uh this bigger house, or maybe you can if you have a basement apartment and then they're helping you pay for half the mortgage or 30% of the mortgage,
Yeah, and
right? So
there's a way to massage things and a way to make things
yeah,
work. The other idea there is it's two less rooms to take care of. Like,
yeah,
you start to
yeah,
realize this, like, on average, like, how much room does one individual utilize? Like,
yeah,
from my understanding, I think one individual, 500 to 600 square feet is like a very comfortable area. So you got two people, that's 1,200. There's some houses that are 5,000, 10,000 square feet, and it's like there's not that many people in there. Like, so it becomes more of a maintenance game. So it is true. Like, if you like utilize all the space and you make the most out of it, I think there's real value there. But the ability to rent something too and become additional incomes, such a value add.
yeah, yeah. And I think there's probably more opportunities in the US than in Canada, but you can still use the same strategy, right? And maybe you're a young couple, and you're using that same strategy that I talked about, and you buy a threeplex or a fourplex,
Yes.
and then you rent out the 1 unit, right? And then the other 3 units are rented out, so they're helping you to pay for your mortgage. And then let's say a year or two later, right? The markets change in the housing markets, and you get some appreciation, and then you can take that equity out and then go buy another place. And now you got a rental property helping
Yes.
you to produce that income. And then you think about it. Remember that example we talked about is okay. I want to replace that $100,000 of income, and now you got this house, and let's say it's generating, I don't know, $4,000 a month of income.
That's 48 grand.
That's 48 grand. And let's say
1.2 million. Yeah.
25 years from now, right?
Yeah.
The rental property is paid off, and you got almost $50,000 of income. So you're already halfway there,
Absolutely. And it would
right?
probably even go up more
Right?
because the thing would be paid down. So what is what would you say would be best for 20 something, 30 something, like whoever's like, I want to get financially fit. What would you say is a good first step or a good few steps? Because I mean, we're looking at some big picture ideas. We're looking at some niche ones, but I want like
Yeah,
real actionable steps where it's like, hey, like I have a job, I'm doing all right, I'm making some extra
yeah.
money. Like, what do you think it is? What do you think the real?
Yeah, I think you know what? I think my personal opinion. I think if you
Yeah.
build a foundation with at least one or two properties,
Yes.
because let's assume because it provides some stability, right? And you got equity being built up slowly.
Yes.
Okay, I think that's not a bad idea. And
Yeah.
get that get one or two rental properties, right? Build that up. And how do you get there is you pay yourself first, and maybe at the beginning just live frugally so that you can save a ton of money so that you can get your first property.
Yeah.
And when it makes sense, right? And I think with interest rates dropping, it's going to make more and more sense over the next 12 months as interest rates drop here in Canada and the US. So there'll be some great opportunities to get into the real estate market again or for the first time, right?
Yeah. Absolutely. And people don't, I think one of the missing points, and this is something that's always helped me when I think about these things, is like every property you get is like a semi-retirement. Like that's a retirement. You know what I mean? Every every investment account you have, whether it's a Roth, a 401k, retirement. Every insurance policy, if you get like a long-term cash insurance policy, retirement. Like some people would say crypto, retirement. Like these are all semi-retirements where you're putting your chips in different places and you're just down the line, you're investing in different things, and some things may go up, some things may go down, but over the long period of time, you're building out 4, 5, 10, 20, 30, 50, 100, 1,000 different potential retirements. And the more you have, the more diversified it becomes.
Yeah, yeah. If you look at the super wealthy and you look at their asset allocation or where their net worth is of capital, right? I mean, I've seen some different charts. It's probably 40 to 50% of these billionaires have 40 to 50% of their net worth in real estate.
Wow.
And in the US, there's I mean, the tax strategies around real estate is very favorable, even more favorable than here in Canada,
Yeah.
with the opportunity for tax breaks against your current income by
Yeah.
flipping properties and keeping them, in a corporate environment. So you can really build that up quite nicely if you're disciplined.
Absolutely.
Yeah. So
Absolutely.
paying yourself first, diversifying your assets. Don't put all your money in one basket. However, if you are an entrepreneurial type, I mean, most millionaires are are either like professionals or small to mid-sized business owners. So if
Yeah.
you take that capital and you're somewhat entrepreneurial, and it's not everybody, but there's a great opportunity to buy small businesses in Canada and the US. And I think there's great opportunities to get some good small businesses at a reasonable price that produces cash flow already. So you're
Yes.
not having to start up a business all by yourself. You're buying the existing business with cash flows, which is a lot easier than starting something up from scratch.
Of course, because you have brand, you have people who are already
Yeah.
working with you. It does become one of these games where it's not even
Yeah.
it is about getting a certain amount of money saved up, but at the same time, it's also if you can create that cash flow in a faster capacity,
Yeah.
then you're basically getting yourself to that financial freedom increment because what the cash flow does is it protects you from anything that occurs. So like you can get cash flow from businesses, you can get cash flow from real estate, you can get cash flow from investments. So it's like once you start creating the cash flow, now it's like, okay, we don't, that's one less thing I have to do because you start
Yeah.
building.
Yeah. So back to your question, it depends, right? If you're entrepreneurial, save up your money and buy a small business and then go buy another one, right? If you're the type of person that is going to work for somebody, that's fine too. And then you got to save more and invest as much as you can early on. But those two paths are really uh, really good paths to take, and really delay the gratification, save more now for the future, and then you can relax a lot more in the future and have more options in the future. It's about
Yeah,
having more freedom,
a
right?
100%. And one of the other biggest things I would bring up too is a lot of people believe that if they're investing in their retirement account, that might be enough. Sometimes that is enough, sometimes that's not. So just me alone, I like to invest my own stuff and have that in a different capacity. Just because, like I said, there's just more optionality and there's more possibility. Um, yeah, what do you think about that? Do you think
Yeah,
just as
like I think you know what? Here's the thing, and I may be biased, but I know the data, right? Actually, Vanguard, one of the
yeah,
largest money management firms in the world, right, that manages trillions of dollars in ETFs, right, electronic traded funds, right? It's just a package of investments, these electronic traded funds, right? They did a study a little while ago, and people that were working with financial advisors had a 3% greater net return than somebody that didn't have a financial advisor.
oh wow,
And it's because of the psychology of it all, right? It keeps you in the game, keeps you less emotional, and somebody to make you accountable to not do stupid things with your money.
yeah.
Okay. And that's the big thing. And it doesn't matter how smart you are. So it really is something that we want to keep reiterating, because you need to work with somebody. And I believe that most people aren't very good. Like, you might be part of that one half of 1% that does really well with your own money, but that's not most people. Most people do need to work with a professional, because if you don't know much about taxes, right, and you make one bad decision about how to invest money, or how to move money around, or a tax decision, right? You know, that advisor is going to help you potentially save millions of dollars, right? Because you made a smart decision with a team of subject matter experts. So a really good financial advisor will be working with a team of subject matter experts, their insurance license as well, working with accountants, lawyers, estate planning professionals, um, healthcare professionals, right? And that's the value, is having somebody that's going to, make sure that you stay on track to your goals for the reasons that are important to you, and most deeply held values. So
Yeah, yeah, I mean, whenever you have someone holding you accountable, working towards those goals, it's always beneficial. Like, and especially when you can get another perspective, it's also. But I think the big moment you brought up is actually having a team where they're collaborating together in all these different capacities. Because there's not too many times where the individuals are speaking with each other and they all feel kind of siloed. So, like, when they're all together and they're unified for you, that becomes a very valuable asset to anyone.
yeah. So when your trusted advisor is your financial advisor, working closely with your accountant, lawyers, and other subject matter experts, you're going to get so much value out of that, and save you a ton of money in taxes, and make sure that you don't do stupid things with your money, keep you focused, And then there's one less thing that you have to worry about, because having peace of mind with your investments will allow you to sleep at night. And we all want to sleep better at night, don't we?
That's true. That's true. Absolutely. And so what are these actionable steps for the individuals to take away? Like, I know we got a few more minutes left in the podcast, and I just want to make sure that everyone's got. So the big ones that we've covered so far are pay yourself first, definitely spend less than you make. Anything else major that we're missing
Yeah.
here? We've talked
Yeah.
about
I
the four,
like the words delayed gratification,
of course.
right? And that covers a whole bunch of stuff off, right? Like you think about, we talked about Starbucks coffee, right? So like, how many people spend $4 a day on a Starbucks coffee? Four
Too
bucks a
many.
day, even 5 days a week, that's $20 a month, $20 a week times four, there's $80. Let's call it $100 a month you're gonna save,
Well, that's
right? Like
and it's not
that's
that's the
huge.
pay yourself first. That's the pay yourself first. Or it's the people spending $20 a week on
Yeah.
lunch and they
Yeah.
go out for lunch. And
You see, delaying gratification is slightly different than paying yourself first. So you pay yourself first, yes, and you look for ways to delay gratification. So maybe you don't, maybe you go to Starbucks 2 times a week instead of 5 times a week, right? You delay the purchase of a brand
by
new car, you buy used cars,
by
right?
delaying the gratification, you can increase paying yourself more.
Yeah, yeah. So you get, depending on what words resonate with you, right? I think, some people might say, yeah, I get a delayed gratification in order to pay myself first. Or, the other people might think, okay, I need to save first to delay gratification, right?
Ab-
So whatever works for you, right?
Ye-
It's the meaning you attach to these words, but figure that out, right? However the math works for you.
100%. And I would also, another thing we kind of brought up, be really run the numbers and know the numbers when you purchase anything, a vehicle, a boat, a house, any of these things, because these are things that you're going to be liable for a while unless you're paying it off in cash. So that's something that you definitely want to make sure you're making the proper decisions with instead of being in this place of, oh my God, I can't believe I did that. Now, how do I get out of this? Because that was kind of a point we talked about a little bit too as well, which is like being house poor or car poor, where it's you're just reliant like you literally just work to pay these bills, and it's like it's not a fun situation to be in. So just be very cautious and careful when going about that, and make sure that you can afford it. Like some people say you shouldn't buy something unless you buy it twice or three times.
No.
And these are all things that you should be consider when making these higher level decisions. And I actually saw something, and I'm curious on your take on it. Someone was saying that when you think about your net worth, so say someone's net worth is $100,000, basically what you do is you knock off the three zeros, and anything under that price, they can make the decision on. So say someone's at a $300,000 net worth, under $300, they can make the decision on. But anything over that price point, they should sit there and like think about it and really make sure they need it or don't need it, in that regard. Because that was one thing where I heard it and I was like, oh, that is kind of interesting. Because it gets you to think a little bit because it's
Yeah,
1/1000th of your net worth.
yeah. You know what? I like that. Anything that can cause you to pause and to think about it, and I think it's great.
Yeah,
So yeah, I like these stop gaps, right?
a
You know,
hundred percent. Because
yeah,
one of the biggest things I realized is that we all have stop and goes, right? So some of us are so specific. And what I talk about, I have a group, and in the men's group I talk about is like, what's your like, I call it an F it number, but what's your number when you just don't care? And as you have more wealth, that number should rise. But there's some of us who that number's way too high. Like if you have $100,000 net worth, your effort number should not be 500 and below. It should be 100 and below. But some of us have a $5 million net worth and our effort number is like $5, where we're like, we don't want to get ripped off. We got to make sure we get the $5. And it's like, that's too many decisions. So it's these little things where you start to realize that true happiness kind of runs up that scale a little bit because it gives you that freedom of like, hey, I worked really hard and I deserve this. And if you have a $10,000 net worth, $10 is your number. And that's cool too. But that's why you got to be really on the ball. But when you have $1 million net worth, your number would be, what would it be? 1,000? Okay. These are both decisions that you can kind of think about and jump around with, but it causes you to not be so like spend the money, see this, do that, do this instantly. And it causes you to sit there and be like, what is my effort number? What is my comfortability? And that was something I saw and I was like, this is really easy for people. So saying, this has been incredible. Is there any last things that you want to leave the people with, slash where can they find you and et cetera, et cetera?
Yeah, yeah, like I'm a values-based trained advisor with my former mentor, Bill Backrack, right? And as Roy Disney once said, once your values are clear, your decisions are easy. So find out what's important about money to you. And what I mean by that is, a certain amount of money so that you feel certain about what's going on and what you're comfortable with. And I love your little rule there that you were talking about, right? Take the 3 zeros off of your net worth, and then make decisions on what's important to you and get your needs met. And yeah, delaying gratification and paying yourself first. Those are two principles that'll get you a long way in this process. So, and I do believe keep things really simple so that it's executable and you can be consistent and you don't have to think too much. And have these simple rules of thumb to keep you guided. And no matter what your net worth, have an advisor. It could be someone that has a lot of money, or if you got certain net worth, working with somebody is going to help you to stop making bad decisions with your money based on what's important to you. Okay. So
Yeah, I love the extra values and always having other perspectives is always something super valuable.
yeah,
So can't say that enough. Saying this is incredible. I can't wait for our next episode.
awesome. That was fun.
Thank you for reaching the end of the podcast. For that, we'll give you a complimentary coaching session in the link below with Edwards Consulting. Hope to see you there and have a great day and keep clocking in.